I have always loved the Little House on the Prairie series. I read all of the books as a child and I watched all of the original show as well as all of the movies. I was so excited to see that Netflix was releasing a new version of the series, and I am a little embarrassed to say I pretty much binge watched it all. So now here I'm going to wait for season 2. I am really excited that they already announced that they're releasing a new season. So while I wait for that, I actually decided to take a walk down memory lane and started rewatching the original series. And because I noticed beautiful quilts in both series, I thought maybe while I wait for season 2 of the new series, I would make some quilts inspired by the Little House on the Prairie series. Then and now. Now again, I'm just going to be showing how the quilts from the series inspired the blocks that I am making. So keep that in mind. They're going to have a little bit of a more modern twist on them, but you can take the information that I give you and make a quilt that more matches the quilts from the series if you like, or make it completely your own. I think that's the beauty of quilting, is getting inspired by something you see and then putting your own twist on it. So for my then quilt, I am going to be using the most nostalgic quilt from the original series, in my opinion, and that is the quilt that appears in the pilot episode, and you see it blowing in the doorway of their cabin. The block actually to me looks a little bit complicated because the patchwork is turned on point and it just gives the whole feel of a simple patchwork a little more interest. All of the cutting requirements for just one block are on the screen. Feel free to take a screenshot of it if you would like. All right, let's walk through this block together. Here is the layout for the block, and it's going to come together really, really easy. It looks really complicated, and it took me a while to figure out how to put blocks together on the diagonal, but for me, laying it out first and working through it from one corner over works the best. So I start in one corner, piece it together, and then I break the block down into rows and piece the rows together. So what I'll do is piece this corner together first, then I sew row together, row together, a row together, and the last corner together. I feel like when you look at the block in that manner, it just makes so much more sense and comes together a lot easier. All right, so here is the corner, which I'm going to piece together first, and you can go about this two different ways. You could put on the actual corner triangle first, and then put on the two side pieces, or you can put the side pieces on first and then put on the corner triangle. I don't really see that it matters that much either way. Just know that if you see me doing it a different way than you were shown or did before, I don't think it really matters. So I'm going to put on the kind of setting triangle first. And the biggest thing you want to make sure is that it lines up evenly right in the corner of the square, and you have it right sides together and sew a 1/4 inch seam. Okay, I'm just going to finger press that for right now, and then I'm going to put on the other side, and you're going to make sure that the way you have your setting triangle lined up is that you have a long straight edge. Okay, and I'm going to press these with the iron before I put on the corner triangle. And I'm going to put a clapper on there just to make sure the seams stay nice and flat. All right, so now I'm going to add on the corner triangle. And to do that, I usually just eyeball it and line it up there and make sure it's even. You're going to have some overhang on both sides, and that's totally fine. Now, if you don't prefer eyeballing it, I completely understand. What you could do is fold your triangle in half and get a crease there, either with just your fingers or the iron. And then do the same with your other piece here. and then just line up those creases, and then you'll have it perfectly even and centered. Make sure the right sides together and sew a 1/4 inch seam. Right, I'm going to just finger press that over, and then I'm going to press it with the iron. Okay, so now that corner is finished, and now we're just going to sew together the next row. And to sew together the row, it's just pretty much like sewing those side setting triangles onto that square. You're just going to have more squares in the row. So make sure that the triangle is lined up in that corner of the square. Sew it on and press it, and just work through all the squares and add the final triangle on. And when you sew the triangles on, make sure you're making one side that is nice, long, and straight. You don't want to accidentally sew a triangle on in the wrong direction. I'm going to get all the rows sewn, and then I'll bring all the rows together and press the block really well. For pressing, I pressed all my seams out toward the black outer fabric. And then on the rows, I pressed all my seams to the black outer fabric and in toward the lighter pink squares. That way, when I bring my rows together, I can line them up, and my seams at the corners, at the points, just lock together. They nest like a puzzle piece so that they can be sewn together just easy and beautifully. Here is the finished block. It is so beautiful. Now, the only thing you may need to do is trim the block down to 13 inches. And to do that, I measure a 1/4 inch from the points to start out, just so that when this block is sewn together, you don't lose those points. Isn't it just so pretty? I love this block so much. Okay, so let's take a look at the block that I'm going to make for the now version of the Little House on the Prairie inspirational quilts. It was really hard to see a good photo of this quilt, but it was a little bit different than anything that I ever saw before, so it really spoke to me. To me, it looked a little bit like a wonky star block. I kind of felt like I saw some star points in the quilt, but there are gaps in the middle that don't quite come to points, and the star legs, if you want to call them, just don't quite come to points either. And I really loved that, because one of the most kind of stressful things about making a star quilt, and star blocks are my favorite, is getting those beautiful points to point to right for you. So I feel like the way I am seeing this block really spoke to me, and my joy of just being able to sew a quilt and not worry about all the perfection of it. So all of the cutting requirements as I see it for making this quilt block are on the screen. So again, feel free to screenshot it. Okay, so let's walk through making this quilt block. Here is the layout for the Now quilt block. Now, this block, you can see, really is just going to be a 9 patch. So it's going to come together really easy once the star point blocks are prepped. So let's prep one of the star point blocks. Okay, so you may be wondering why I'm using these triangles instead of, a rectangle to make these star points. And that's because you can't use a rectangle like you think you would with stitch and flip for making these elongated star points. Now, I got a lot of backlash last time I tried to show making half rectangles and why you have to turn the rectangle kind of on a, diagonal. So I'm going to show again, just so you can see, just so you don't waste fabric. It really needs to be done this way, or maybe you can find another way, but you can't line the rectangle up in the corner. So if you do that, and if you stitch corner to corner, when you turn the and do the flip, it's not going to be correct. So that's that. It's just not going to be. You can try if you would like to as much as you want, but it really is going to be easier for you if you cut your triangles and piece it together the way I'm going to show you. Now, because to me, I wanted the the points to look a little more organic, what I'm going to show you is leaving your square hole. I'm not going to trim away a diagonal piece. If it's easier for you to do that, go ahead and do that. But I want mine to be a little different each time. Now, what I do is I line up my square, the corner that I'm working on, up with my lines here. If you don't have a um, ruler on your machine, you could mark the point before if you need to. But instead of having to mark all those, I'm just going to refer to my ruler here. So I have it lined up so that I'm going to go over 2 inches, and I'm going to overlay the flat part of the triangle on the diagonal where it is between my 7, which is 2 inches over, and the 1/4 inch line. So I want it to overhang a little bit between there. And then I'm going to take the point and go over so that it's in the corner. So I'm going to sew a 1/4 inch seam along here, and these are right sides together. Now, before I cut anything off, because this is going to get cut off here, I'm going to flip it over and make sure that triangle covers as much as possible. It's really a little bit close right here, but I think it'll be close enough. So did pretty good on that side. Now we're going to work on this side. So we're pretty much going to do the same thing. I'm going to line up my square. Then I'm going to flip my triangle so that the flat part is lining up where there's an overhang between the 6, which is 2 inches over, and it's about 1/4 inch overhang where it's laying right between there. And then my point is going to come up to the corner, and I'm just going to sew a 1/4 inch seam across here. And just honestly, each time it's probably going to look a little different because they're going to shift a little bit. It's not going to be enough difference where it's going to really, really stand out. So I'm just going to flip it over and make sure it covers pretty good. So it's really close here again. So I probably need to, when I lay this down, bring this down just a little bit more next time and have a little more overhang because I'm cutting it pretty close. But what we're going to do next is trim off the overage here. Right, I'm just going to trim that off. Okay, and now I'm going to press the seams with my iron. All right, it looks a little bit funny, but now we're just going to trim it to a 4.5 inch square. And I don't take too much care in how even it is. I want them to be a little bit wonky. This is a no worries block. Here's the first star point square, and now I just need to make 3 more. Here is the layout for the block. It is so easy to sew together because we're just going to bring it together as a 9 patch. I'm going to take the first 2 squares in the first row, place them right sides together, and sew a 1/4 inch seam. I'm not going to cut my thread, and I'm going to take the next 2 squares in the middle row and sew them right sides together. Not going to cut the thread, and I'm going to bring the next 2 squares in the 3rd row. Okay, so now we're just going to finger press the seams. We're going to press the seams toward all of the solid squares. So in the middle, we're pressing toward the middle square, and on the 1st and 3rd row, we're pressing out toward the corner squares. And now we're just going to add on the 3rd square for each row. All right, and then press again toward the solid squares. I'm going to press this with my iron. All right, it's pressed nice and flat, so I'm just going to bring these rows together. Lay it right sides together, and I'm going to line up my points here by nesting my seams together, and I'll just sew a 1/4 inch seam. And then I'm just going to do the same thing on the other side. All right, and then I'm just going to press the seams. Here is the block all finished. I absolutely love how it turned out. Now, something I want to point out, as I made blocks, I made a decision, and that was to alternate which fabric was in the background of my star points. I just thought it would be really fun to do that because then the background is a simple patchwork checkerboard pattern, and it will just look like the stars are inlaid in that design. So I really loved how that was turning out. I had so much fun making these 2 quilt blocks. I'll put up on the screen the blocks that I have together so far so you can see how they kind of look coming together. Which of the 2 blocks will you use to make a quilt, or will you use both of them? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.